Namaste. Namaste, everyone. A very warm welcome to the session. Today, we are beginning with a special series on the Four Austerities as given by the Mother. The title of today's session is Making the Body Truly Beautiful and Its Actions Meaningful. We have with us today Dr. Ramesh Bijlani and Dr. Aditi Kaul as the speakers. Dr. Ramesh Bijlani is a prolific writer and an inspirational speaker. He loves to use the gift of communication that he has received from the divine for dispensing small doses of love and wisdom from the inexhaustible pharmacy of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Once a professor at AIMS New Delhi, Dr. Bijlani is now a spiritual seeker at Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. Dr. Aditi Kaul is a dedicated proponent of integral yoga psychology. Her deep inquiry into the human experience, enriched by formal training in psychology, allows her to emphasize the importance of self-work and conscious living practices in everyday life. Aditi offers online courses and workshops across various platforms rooted in the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Thank you, Dr. Bijlani sir. Thank you, Aditi, for being with us today. We look forward to an enriching session with you, both of you. Over to you.
Thank you, Arunima. This echo that I'm getting. Hello? Okay. Now it's fine. Aditi knows how to fix everything. I think she did something. Anyway, so thank you, Arunima, for a very generous introduction to both of us. And as you said, we are starting a new series today in the month of the birthday of the Mother. The Four Austerity is one of the most useful, in a way one might say, pieces of advice that we have in great detail, which is valid for every spiritual seeker. And when the Mother has talked about the four, she's referring to the parts of the being: the physical, vital, mental, and the psychic. And the word austerity is actually for tapasya. So she has talked about four types of tapasya. And like everybody, she has used the word austerity in the English language because that is the nearest equivalent that we have. Now, what does tapasya really mean? Tapasya is actually in the uh, uh, spiritual literature or the spiritual path, a logical extension and ultimate culmination of a rather simple and common sense idea. It is, we know that time and energy are limited, and therefore uh, we have to prioritize because there's so much to do in life, and there isn't enough time and energy for everything, not even everything worthwhile. And therefore, we have to prioritize. And then we have to focus on what is most important, what is top priority, and apply our energy and forces as much as possible on that. And that multiplies the impact. And a simple example would be a child for a board exam or an entrance exam, giving up games and sports, giving up watching the television, giving up even looking at social media for a limited period, so that all the time and energy is available for cracking the exam. Now, the same principle applies to the uh, on the spiritual path, and what it means is that we focus our energies. In fact, tapas means heat. In हिंदी we often say that तप गया या लोहा तप जाएगा तो उसके बाद उसको हथौड़ा मारते हैं तो मोल्ड हो जाता है. So tapas means heat. Heat is also a concentrated form of energy, and as school students in science, we have often done and enjoyed that experiment of using a lens to concentrate sunlight on a piece of paper, and the sunlight is able to burn the paper because once it is concentrated, it generates so much heat that it is able to burn the paper. So heat is a concentrated form of energy. And That's what we do on the spiritual path also. And it comes naturally to the seeker because the seeker realizes, on one hand, that the goal is lofty, the road is very long, and every step that the person takes on the path is rewarding. Rewarding in the sense that it gives a joy which far surpasses anything that the person has experienced in ordinary pleasures of life. And the other hand, the even the glimpses that the person gets of the experience or what the person is pursuing is enough to make the person continue the journey on this untrodden path, untrodden for that person. So the person continues on the adventure uh, with a lot of encouragement uh, because of the joy that the even the glimpses give, and because of the joy of pursuit itself. And the person, finds the journey rewarding enough to continue focusing on it. And when the person does that and realizes that what the person is getting from this journey far surpasses any of the pleasures that the person has received earlier, naturally, because there's a focus, there's a concentration, those other superfluous things start dropping out of life. So life starts getting simplified. And that is essentially what it is about, which means that now life has fewer needs, fewer things on which the person depends. So one starts living on less and less and starts enjoying it more and more. So that is essentially what uh, this tapasya or austerity on the spiritual path is about. But then, as you'll see, the essence is not what has been given up or how much has been given up, but the focus is on why it has been given up. It has been given up to concentrate the energy and forces and time and everything, that all the resources that the person has, on what really matters to the person. And the person does not feel that it is like giving up, because the person is being amply rewarded. The things which were very interesting and amusing and entertaining earlier no longer seem interesting. So that's why the person has given them up. And the joy is coming not from the process of giving up, but from the pursuit, and from what is being pursued, even the glimpses of what is being pursued. That is what is giving the joy to the person. And therefore, when we look upon uh, this process as something which is essentially about giving up, one has to realize that the process is that the giving up is not the essence of the process. Giving up is not the goal. Giving up happens as a byproduct, as something which comes naturally when you are pursuing the path. The goal is something else. It's a means to the goal, not the goal itself. But then it is only one step away from it that sometimes, uh, because of perverted thinking, giving up itself starts seeming like the goal and the essence of the entire process. And if giving up is what the whole thing is about, if one starts believing that it is giving up that is the goal and giving up the essence of the whole process, then the more of it, the better, which means the person starts giving up more and more. And the more the person gives up, he reaches a point when it becomes an inconvenience and sometimes also a source of self torture. And then, it can boost the ego. See, for the sake of making progress on the spiritual path, I'm ready to suffer so much. And that starts boosting the ego of the person. So, more the person gives up, the better. And the more the torture and the more the suffering, still better. So, that is what austerity, in fact, is the word that carries that flavor. It carries that flavor of lying on a bed of nails. That is the type of flavor that austerity has. But tapas is not that. But for want of a better word, we often translate tapasya into austerity. So, with this little background, let me go share the screen. So, this is the talk, and it's about the first one in the series on physical austerity, austerity of the body. And that would make the body truly beautiful in the true sense of the word. And not only the form would be beautiful, its actions would become meaningful. So, first, let's see what austerity is not. It is not self-mortification, it is not torture, it is not deliberate, willful suffering, and it does not treat body as a useless burden. Uh, Body is not an obstacle on the path, on the spiritual path, a useless burden to be carried. And because it is a burden that needs food and water, it has to be fed and kept alive. But at the same time, it is a burden and it has to be only tolerated till death brings the only relief that is available. That is sometimes the type of uh, idea that one has on the spiritual path, but that is not what it is about. Now, what austerity is that if we go about it in a sort of linear terms of linear thinking, that life has a purpose, and for fulfilling that purpose, the instruments that we have been given are the body and the mind. Now, the instruments have limited capacity and also limited time available for using this capacity. Austerity helps conserve the capacity, and austerity therefore needs self control and self mastery. That is, controlling oneself not to dissipate our resources in terms of time and energy. And austerity is partly willful because one realizes that if I fritter away my energy and time, then the goal will never be reached. And partly the byproduct of an intense aspiration because the pursuit itself gives joy, and therefore uh, giving up doesn't feel like giving up, and therefore living on less becomes byproduct of that aspiration. Now, here is a quote directly from the mother. There's an austerity which is far greater, more complete, and more difficult than all the austerities of the ascetic. Now, it is the ascetic, we have in mind when we think of self-torture as sort of a process of austerity or tapasya. The person who is deliberately torturing himself and suffering. Uh, so, the austerity that the mother is talking about is far greater in value in terms of its value on the spiritual path, more complete because it involves all parts of the being. Rarely would an ascetic uh, uh, actually observe austerity at the physical, vital, mental, and psychic, all these levels. So it is more complete and also more difficult. More difficult, say, for example, if austerity is about, uh, say, food, then to observe a total fast for a limited period of time is much easier than to eat only as much as is necessary and be happy with whatever is available all the time. That would be much more difficult than observing a total fast for a limited period of time. So it's more difficult, it's not easier. So there is an austerity which is far greater, more complete, and more difficult than all the austerities of the ascetic. It, that is the ascetic austerity, is a kind of perverse need for suffering. These things are very far from the spiritual life. So the need for suffering is actually very far from spiritual life. The avowed purpose of such practices is to abolish all sensation so that the body may no longer be an obstacle to one's flight towards the spirit. Now, this has been a traditional view in some of the schools, in that if we uh, that body is actually an obstacle, if only we could live without food and water, uh, but that is not possible because of the body, and therefore the body is preventing us from escape into some other world where there's all bliss, and therefore the body is an obstacle on our flight towards that world of the spirit where this type of dependence on food and water and all these things will not be there. And Mother says that the efficacy of such means, that is those which try to abolish all sensation of the body so that you can torture the body and still not feel the suffering, that type of efficacy of this type of an approach is open to doubt. So austerity is not really to escape the difficulties of life. Austerity incorporates embracing life with all its difficulties, but it is lived with a sense of measure and balance, equanimity and serenity. And it's much more difficult to surmount or conquer illness by self discipline than to despise the body. So, hating the body is much easier treating the body as something undesirable and necessary evil is much easier than to observe self-discipline. And most difficult is to maintain the consciousness at its peak and never to allow the body to act under the influence of a lower impulse. So the constant part is what is difficult. It is the constant part that is difficult. Uh, for a brief period, anybody can have that type of a consciousness. But what is difficult is to maintain the consciousness at its peak and never to allow the body to act under the influence of a lower impulse, like, say, food is in front of you, uh, never to get carried away by greed, even if the food is palatable. The bed feels very comfortable in the type of cold that we have in Delhi or Eva has in London. Of course, Aditi is escaping that in Pondicherry. So if you are in that type of a cold, you don't feel like getting out of the warm bed. So not to give in to that. So that is again a lower impulse. Or so one feels like sleeping more, and one sleeps more. Naturally, you don't have time for exercise. So you become lazy. Laziness is again a type of a lower impulse. So not to act under the influence of a lower impulse, never to do it. Maintain the consciousness at its peak all the time. That is the most difficult. This is the spirit behind also this well-known part of the first verse of the Isha Upanishad, Tena Tyaktena Bhunjitha. What it means is, this is Sri Aurobindo's translation, by that renounced, you should enjoy. Now, if we give it a little twist, it's easier to understand. That is, renounce and enjoy. How can you both renounce and enjoy? If you have renounced internally, if you have achieved inner renunciation, that is, uh, you are no longer dependent on what you are consuming for happiness, then if it is available, you can have it and enjoy it. But when it is not available, you will not miss it. So you enjoy it all the more when it is available, because internally you have renounced it. Your happiness is not dependent on it anymore. You're not attached to it. While it is there, you enjoy it, but you don't suffer at that time from the insecurity. How long will it last? When will I get it again? You're not thinking of that. And therefore, you'll enjoy it all the more. But actually, literally, it means the way Sri Aurobindo has translated, by that renounced, you should enjoy, which means you should enjoy from the very process of renouncing. By renouncing it, you should enjoy. How does that happen? Because if you see, suppose you have a struggle going on in your mind, you have palatable food in front of you, you know it is not good for you, already eaten enough. Eating anymore will be out of greed. So you have that conflict whether to take that or not. If you take it, there'll be a certain type of enjoyment. Well, I did get a little more joy from eating it. But a still greater joy will come if you do not give in to that impulse and renounce it. So the joy that you get from the success at renouncing it, in spite of the temptation being in front of you, is something which you should enjoy, because that is a greater type of enjoyment. So by that renounced, you should enjoy. So you get that enjoyment not because you took that food, but because you actually successfully renounced it. So by that renounced, you should enjoy. That is tena taktena bhunjitha. Now, here I stop and hand over to Aditi to continue.
Do I have the option of renouncing and being in silence and just letting my presence talk? Have I achieved that state? But I know the answer is no, so I will just let the human talk. But yes, so just the base which you were setting up and sharing about what austerity is and how, as we understand it as tapasya, what came to me was more of, you kept saying self-discipline, which translates into sadhana in real time. That how I can have a mental notion of this should be done, but when I actually start doing it, that is when the real discipline comes in. So discipline in the mind level and discipline at the action level. And when we are talking about the body, we as human beings have not even learned to listen to the body. We listen to the mind, what the mind says about the body. So even if I want to say, have the physical discipline, it is my mind instructing that you should do that, you should do this, even in terms of, say, eating. So if I've seen, say, a video or some friend of mine has said something that this should be eaten, or suddenly there's this new trend of eating something, I'm like, I will convince my body that no, you should eat this. This is healthy for my body. But it's not that I have actually spent enough time to understand the language of my physical, what my body needs. So, can I silence my mind and let my body speak? What is beneficial for my body? And that is what requires discipline. That can I keep the other parts in silence and know the language? That, okay, if there's a standard of, okay, there's 8 hours of sleep, 7 hours of sleep, yes. But can I check with my body what hours my body needs? So at the physical level, the discipline is listening to the language which the physical is speaking, because physical has its own consciousness. So can I develop that space inside of me, which is not so divided that my emotions are overpowering my body, my mind is overpowering my body, but I'm able to hear the language of my body. That is the real, like, real discipline. That, like, when that example came up, that there's food in front of me and still I'm not eating. But it's the one possibility can be I'm like, oh no, I should not eat. It doesn't look good. All of those things. That will be a different kind of control. But a control that no matter how much food is in front of me, my body doesn't want it. That work which I can do at myself, that is what inner renunciation at the physical level looks like. Because usually when we talk about body, at least at the younger age and also quite till late, in that sense, it's more about the identity that I want to maintain discipline in the physical so that I'm healthy at the body level. I look good at the body level because physical is my identity. So how I'm looking, so a lot of people get into yoga or get into exercise because they want to look fit. So that's a very exterior idea of physical, that how is my physical being perceived by the other. So that level of discipline is a very surface level discipline. It's a very outer level of discipline that, okay, so I'm eating right, I'm sleeping at the right time, I'm exercising well, but it is more what intention is it being catered to? That why am I doing it? I'm just doing it to say it's like a dressing. It is really not nourishing. So self-discipline is about nourishing the physical and not just dressing the physical. That understanding, when we develop, that can really bring in a sense of that we naturally tune into it. So when we talk about, like, habits come in the space of physical a lot, that we make plans, we make like, okay, this should be done, that should be done. We are not able to do it. Why? Because it's like, to a science student, we are giving commerce. So we are not understanding the language of the body. We are like, mind and emotions, no, that needs to be in control, that needs to be in control. So just shifting that focus, that, okay, being patient with yourself at the same time being sincere. So it's like, just because I know that, okay, people who wake up at 4 a.m. are spiritual people. So I will wake at 4 a.m. And if I'm waking up at 4 a.m., I'm a spiritual person. That is not the self-discipline we are looking at. We're looking at, even if I'm waking up at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, is my first thought towards the divine. So even if I'm waking up at 4 a.m. and using my phone, but no, I'm waking up at a time where spiritual people wake up, but I'm doing what is a very unconscious act or a very mechanical act. So that's not the discipline we are talking about. Is like, whenever I wake up, what is my last thought? Or say when I go to sleep, what is my last thought? So disciplining at a subtle level that expresses itself in the body, which expresses itself in the material world, rather than confining ourselves to actions that look like discipline, but feel very mechanical. So actions that can take you inside are actions that emerge from inside. So the source needs to be right. I can't expect to follow the trend and then also make that shift inside, because that we keep talking about in forums like this, that approach is more like an inside out approach. So my life on the outside can look like I'm the most laziest person. I'm not following the routine, I'm not doing anything, but inside of me I will know that whichever action is stemming out of my being is coming from a right space and it is right for my physical. So that understanding, that connection with the presence within get expressed in the physical. So say when I'm doing my morning practices, am I just doing asanas or I'm doing yoga asanas? So the moment I put my intention into the practice, the energy shifts. So that is a discipline. So if I'm eating, I might be eating the healthiest food, but I'm not present while eating. I'm watching something, I'm talking to somebody, I'm thinking something. So I might be eating the healthiest food at the right time, like yes, 12 o'clock, the Agni is right, and I have to eat because I'll like. So am I wearing the garb of a spiritual person? So am I looking for a spiritual identity or I'm looking for a spiritual experience? Because spiritual experience can come in any identity. So what is my preference when I'm just starting? And it's applicable to all aspects. But since we're talking about the physical today, because somewhere all of us, the moment we get a glimpse of what an inner life is, we immediately want to make our outer life like this. So I will get rid of all the things. I will wear a certain kind of clothes. I will see a certain kind of like read literature. So all of those things are helpful, no doubt about it. But more than changing the exterior, we focus on the changing the interior, it reflects in the outer expression. So in terms of eating, with what intention I'm eating, does my body need food right now or does my mind need food right now? If I'm sleeping, am I sleeping because, oh, I should be sleeping? But am I preparing myself? So, like how mother speaks, no, that you should never go to sleep when you're tired. There's a certain sense of relaxation, and then you consciously enter the sleep. You don't fall into sleep. So, it's like not falling into sleep, entering into sleep, not mindlessly eating, but consciously eating. So, all the activities at the physical level which help us be alive, all those activities, what will be the self-discipline? Just bring awareness to it. Just bring being more conscious of it. Then there's so much of peripheral understanding that right time, right place, right people, all of those things naturally drop. So there's no division, there's more of harmony in the physical. So the body will tell you when to eat, the body will tell you when to sleep. So we are not governed by the structure given, like a spiritual structure, but it's more like an experiential understanding. So that is where, and also one last thing before I close and pass on to you. It's one thing when you said inner renunciation, what came to me was also it's important to not judge the process of renunciation because it cannot be complete in the beginning. I might be like, today, I might be able to control myself, tomorrow, I may not be. So, am I respectful of that process? Because until unless I'm respecting the process, the change will not come in. Because the moment I see a lack in me, I'll be very judgmental and I'll be like, no, 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 I can't do it. So sincerely walking the path, but also keeping that space that if I'm not able to, I come back. Because usually that is what happens when we try to inculcate habits. Even if one day we are like, okay, today I didn't wake up on time, then tomorrow I was like, oh, yesterday became my reference point. Then day before yesterday became my reference point, and then we are like out. Then 7 days, 10 days, it just goes. So giving yourself that yes, this is discipline, but more than the outer discipline, is that discipline also entering the subtle aspects of my life and I'm becoming more organized in my internal life? Is like the internal clock in me sleeping at the right time, eating at the right time, waking up at the right time, wanting to exercise. So, till the time, like how breathing is to the physical, all the activities become that crucial. Yet, they are not like all the time, we are not thinking about breathing. It happens. We just become conscious of it. So just that element when we can bring in the physical and respect that process without judgment, I think then it can be more as a part of a routine and not like you said in the beginning that we are not rejecting it like one part, but because the whole idea of integral living is to integrate it in our everyday life. So just respecting that process and creating that space for the process to reveal itself. So we conceive an idea and then let it become our experience. So that expansion, that experience is very important for us. So, yeah, these were my thoughts before you continue sharing.
When Aditi said that spiritual people get up at 4 in the morning and I get up at 4 and therefore I am spiritual, it would be something like, saying that Mithu, when she sings, she often takes a little Ayurvedic pill which soothes the throat, a throat soothing pill. Yeah? So I start consuming that pill. That will not make me a singer like her. Okay, so let me now share the screen again. I don't know how it went back to the first one again. We'll go for it. Okay. See, the computers have become very intelligent. I left it at the interval, but went back to the first slide. It assumed that that's what I will need once again. That's where it should begin. Now, austerity of physical life. So now we'll concentrate not on just what austerity is or it is what it is not, but on austerity of physical life. The aim of austerity, the physical austerity, is to have beauty in the form, harmony in the posture. The movements should become supple and agile, and the activities should become powerful, and the body should become resistant to disease. So you can see that the mother has thought of every aspect of the body, starting with the base, that is the form. The form itself should be beautiful in the true sense of the word, that is properly proportioned and uh, proper weight and so on and everything. Harmonious in posture, again important. And then what do we do with this body which has a beautiful form and has a beautiful posture that a statue can also have? It should also be able to move. And how should the movements be? Supple and agile. And then what for are we moving? For some performing some work, for some activity. That activity should be powerful. Powerful is not only because of greater strength, but because of the consciousness that is behind that activity. Why is that activity being carried out? What is the motive? What is the consciousness behind that activity? And of course, it is important for all this, for the body to be able to do it without interruption, that the body should be resistant to disease. Now, some of the basic things which apply to all aspects of physical austerity are that we should adopt a regular routine. Then, whatever is good, whatever is a part of physical austerity is more likely to be done regularly. So one should develop a routine, what in Ayurveda we call dincharya. And all of us do it. And to what extent we go, what type of a routine it is, that we will not get into. And there will be individual variations which are necessary as well as sometimes inevitable. Uh, but at the same time, a routine leads to formation of habits. That saves time. We don't have to think too much about what to do when. So it is very useful to form those habits, but what should not become a slave of those habits. As Aditi was saying a short while back, that we should not feel that if one day I couldn't do this or something has gone wrong, or one day you sort of miss on that routine, the routine is broken, then you feel bad. Or circumstances change, your knowledge changes, your awareness of what is good, what type of routine you should have, that changes. One should be able to change it. Then, since we are talking about the self control, it may involve some degree of difficulty, inconvenience that one should endure when necessary. Not for the sake of the difficulty itself, not to torture oneself, that is not the aim, but at the same time, one should have tolerance towards difficulties and suffering and all that. And at the same time, while effort is being put in at the physical level, this effort should not exhaust us. Something similar we find in the Gita in one of the again widely quoted verses, Yuktahara Viharasya. Yuktahara Viharasya Yukta Cheshtasya Karmasu Yukta Swapnavabodhasya Yogo Bhavati Dukhaha. Now, ahar is food, that should be yukta. Vihar is play or what we do for recreation or uh, in, sometimes lifestyle as a whole, that should be yukta. Then cheshta is effort. Cheshta for what? For work. The effort that we put into work, that should be yukta. Swapna, uh, we dream at the sleeping time. So the sleep and bodha, our bodha, when we are awake, when we are in the waking consciousness. So sleep and wakefulness should be yukta. Now, what does yukta mean? And of course, yoga destroys all sorrows. Yogo bhavati dukhaha. Yoga destroys all sorrows. Now, what does yukta mean? Normally, it is translated as moderate and well regulated. That can be also a valid meaning even in this verse. But if you look at it in the overall context of the Gita, which is a textbook of yoga, what does it mean? Yukta also means in the consciousness of the divine, which means that when we are eating or playing or putting effort into work or sleeping or when we are awake, in all these states, our consciousness should be stationed in the divine. One should be in the consciousness of the divine. And that is will keep coming up again and again when we talk about not only what to eat and when to eat and how much to eat, but also how to eat. Not only when to sleep, how long to sleep, but how we sleep. So the how part means that it should be in the consciousness of the divine. So this is Sri Aurobindo's translation. Yoga destroys all sorrows for him in whom the sleep and waking, the food, the play, the putting forth of effort in works are all yukta. The reason why it's not translated yukta is because yukta itself has a complex meaning in the present context. Now we come to these aspects one by one. Food. Eating should be for need, what we eat, when we eat, how much we eat, and how we eat. Should be for need, not for greed. And all these things are important. One of the pitfalls is just for once or once in a while, which means we tend to make exceptions. And that is one of the pitfalls. Uh, once I was, in fact, encouraging Aditi to have something which we knew it is not healthy, but I told her once in a while you can take it, doesn't matter. Then she asked me, as she always does, a good question. She said, uh, what actually is meant by once in a while? What? Because it's a very common excuse. That set me thinking, and eventually, what I came up with was that once in a while means that the last time you broke the rule was so long ago that you don't remember when you did it. Then it is once in a while. Huh? Now, no nightly escapades, whether it is a late night dinner or a heavy dinner or a dinner which includes hard drinks or whatever. So, no nightly escapades, no feasting, no gluttony. No slow poisons. No feasting and no gluttony is more difficult than fast for a limited period of time. No slow poisons, for example, alcohol, tobacco, etc. And now here comes the how part, how one should eat. Firstly, one should give up the preoccupation with food. Early in the morning, a typical housewife in India, even today, starts thinking about what we'll have for breakfast. Sometimes the planning begins the night before or the evening before, what we'll have for breakfast tomorrow. Hardly is breakfast over, the thought goes to what will we have for lunch. Not only the housewife, but in fact, uh, in one way or the other, most of us are so preoccupied with food. That is what has to be given up. Food is a necessity, but same time it should not preoccupy us to the extent that it encroaches on the time and energy available for far more important things. And that is possible if one becomes rather dispassionate or scientific about it. How much food do I need? What are the types of foods I need? What are the basic nutrients I need? And what type of a diet can supply me those nutrients? And for Indians, it's very easy because our traditional diet of a cereal pulse combination and some fruits and vegetables, some milk products in moderation, fat in moderation, spices in moderation, all this gives us all that we need. And it doesn't matter what we have cooked out of it. So that is this dispassionate scientific way of looking at it. Then mindful eating, as it is called these days, which means while we are eating, we should be conscious of the fact that we are eating, and that is accentuated. If you start eating with a prayer and eating with a prayer, and while eating, eat slowly and with a sense of gratitude, even while eating, do justice to all the effort that has gone into producing that food, and marvel at the natural processes which made the food, which make it possible for us to digest the food and make it possible for that food after digestion to be converted into what we are. What our body becomes is so different from our food, and yet our food gets converted into that. Isn't that a great marvel? So if you are focusing on that and eating with a sense of gratitude for all this, the availability of the food, those who grew the food, and the fact that we are able to digest the food and utilize the food and convert it into our body, convert it into our activities, that is mindful eating. Now, another important factor, sleep. Now, food and sleep interact with each other. Moderation in food reduces the need for sleep. We know after a heavy meal, we tend to feel sleepy. That is not because sleep is necessary, but because we have eaten much more than was necessary. And now all the blood is going to the gut. The brain is getting less blood, and that is why we feel sleepy. It's not because it is sleeping time. Then a warm drink at bedtime encourages sleep, and one can have that. Then the food, particularly the last meal, the evening meal, is early and light. It encourages a quiet sleep. On the other hand, a heavy food, a heavy meal, particularly a heavy dinner, is likely to give us disturbed sleep. And again, not only when we sleep and how long we sleep, how we sleep is important. How to sleep? Clear mind. Clear mind, not only in terms of thinking, but also because of a clear conscience. Quiet feelings, being at peace, no heated arguments, at least a few hours before bedtime, and calmed desires. So all these things interact with each other. Uh, so it's just because physical doesn't mean it does not interact with the vital. Tamed preoccupations. That is, whatever preoccupations we have, not just about food or sleep, but even other preoccupations, they should be subdued. Don't get so uh, preoccupied with them that doesn't let us sleep. None of those preoccupations will be served anyway during sleep. The next day, the mother will show the path. So tame them down. One can meditate. That's a good way to fall asleep, especially if one is finding it difficult to go to sleep. And if one were to give the two most essential things for falling asleep peacefully, uh, the day spent doing useful, productive work, which had at least some element of impersonal nature. The mother said one of the most beautiful pieces of advice from the mother is do at least one impersonal work every day, something which was completely free of any self interest, not motivated by anything what I will get out of it. So do at least one work of that type, so that if the day has been spent usefully, productively, going uh, good work, and at least something which was purely impersonal in nature, plus a clear conscience, which means one has, by and large, whenever the opportunity came, whenever the conflict came about what is right and wrong, heard the voice of the psychic being. Then exercise, yet another aspect of physical austerity. Which ones and how much? Yogic postures are better than other exercises, but done with the right attitude, any exercise can become yogic. Without that attitude, even yogic postures remain just exercise. So, how one does the exercise is also important, not just which ones or how much. I'll not get into the details of why yogic postures are better than other things, that sometime later, or we have done it earlier also in other sessions. May seek expert guidance. The mother has talked about tailor-made programs for different individuals with different aims. For example, if somebody is uh, wanting to enter competitive sports, then the one who wants to and is sort of more gifted for becoming a sprint runner will require a different type of training as compared to the one who has to run long races, and that person in turn will need a different type of training as compared to one who is training to become a weightlifter. So seek expert guidance who will design for you a particular type of program. But then whatever type of program one gets for these specific needs, along with that, yogic postures will still be useful, because those programs may not provide for improving the flexibility of the body. And if the body is not flexible, then any other program designed for any of these ends to enter into a particular type of competitive sports is likely to lead to an injury. So injury will be prevented if in the first place one has improved the flexibility of the body using the yogic postures, because they do that the best because of their slow and gentle nature and covering everything from top to toe. Very comprehensive. Hardly any muscle or joint or ligament is spared in the yogic posture. So it gives a total flexibility to the entire body, which others don't do. And uh, since it is done in through slow, gentle, and graceful movements, harmonious movements, and conscious movements, injury is very unlikely and flexibility improves to remarkably. Then don't go for what is easy, pleasant, or trendy. For example, these days it is trendy to go to the gym, and uh, it is done without any yogic postures, and the result is that injuries are very common. Mm. You would have seen so many sports injury centers. As the tendency to go to the gym is increasing, the sports injury centers are also becoming more uh, in demand, and the supply is keeping up with the demand. Have you ever seen a yoga injury center? Mm. It's not there. Don't go for what is easy, pleasant, or trendy, and regularity is important. Again, forming habits but not becoming a slave of habits. Now, what is all this going? The body will be put to. It has to be put to use. Food, exercise, and sleep were taking care of the body, keeping the equipment in good shape. But this equipment has to be used. It has to be used for work, and there also austerity comes in. Uh, no preferences. There's no work that is big or small, important or unimportant. Everything has its place. Even dull, repetitive, mechanical jobs which require very little thinking, very involve very little creativity, they are also very important. The world can't run without those type of activities. So there's nothing which is unimportant that is being done in the world. Now, one might say that, well, everybody is not made for all types of work, but then so there should be preferences, but then the preference has to be in terms of our swabhava and swadharma both. We do not know our own swabhava well often. The usual example that I give is somebody says that I want to be a doctor because I am very compassionate. Okay, but then if you fail to become a doctor, you can also become a nurse, you can become a counselor, you can become a physiotherapist. That also needs compassion. uh, and even if you fail to become any of those things, there's hardly anything, any type of life which has no room for compassion. So very often the we say that I am not made for this, or I am specially made for this. That hides some other motives rather than purely based on our own swabhava. The second thing is our swadharma, that placed in a particular situation, what is it that is expected of me? So, putting these two together, yes, one can have preferences, but they are not being motivated by egoistic preferences. They are not being not based on considerations of worldly gain and loss. Uh, so that is the type of preference the mother is referring to here, and she says there should be no preferences. Because work by itself, nothing is big or small, nothing is important or unimportant. And even if we end up getting the type of work that we enjoy doing and for which we are made, we will not be spending 100% of our time on that. Nobody gets 100% of his time available for doing that job which you really enjoy and are passionate about. One may be fond of teaching and one may end up becoming a teacher. The person is a very good teacher, but if the person says that I only teach, I will do no administrative work, I'll not set question papers for examining the students, then this person will not be able to survive, which means that you have to do something which you may not enjoy that much, but then that is a part of the deal. It's a package deal. That's the way it is in life. And therefore, while it's helpful if one does what one likes to do, so do what you like, but what is also important in life is to like what one actually does, like what one has to do. Now, what is it that makes us like the work? We should have passion for excellence, not only passion for the work, but also passion for excellence. And if we do the work for which we are really made, for which we are fit, then we will be able to excel, which means this passion will actually have an outlet, will have a sense of fulfillment. One should have that passion for excellence. an aspiration for progress. And as a result, even if it is mechanical and repetitive work, it should keep getting better in quality. And when we are totally absorbed in the work that we really like to do, we achieve what is these days called a sense of flow. And Daniel Goleman, who has talked about the type of work that we really can do well and enjoy doing. He's talked about not only the fact that we should have passion for that type of work, we should also excel in that work. We may have passion for something, but we can't do it well. That doesn't help. I might have a passion for singing, but if I'm not a singer, I'll not be able to sing well. So I should have passion for something and I should also be able to excel in it. And thirdly, most important, which we sometimes don't realize, is the work should be ethically sound. That is what creates the flow. For example, if there is an expert pickpocket, he's passionate about it, he's very good at his job, nobody has been able to catch him so far, but he will not be able to get the same joy from this work because he's not doing something ethically sound. Then shun all excess, not only excess in terms of food, sleep, or exercise, but also excess in terms of work and the effort put into the work. Shun all excess. Ati sarvatra varjayet, as you know, that ancient dictum says. Shun all vice, big or small. So nothing like a small vice. Do not torture the body, no torture, no neglect. At the same, do not neglect the body. Pay attention to it, and yet there should be no obsession about looking after the body. No obsession about a particular routine, no obsession about the habits that one has formed, no matter how good those habits are. So none of these things, while torture and neglect are not good, obsession with taking care of the body is also not good, because there can come a time when one gets so obsessed about it that one can spend all 24 hours of the day just taking good care of the body. But what use it is to have that healthy body if there's no time left to do anything with it? So, in other words, moderation is the golden rule, and that moderation should be rooted in conscious or calculated or mindful self discipline and self control. They're all just different ways of putting it. One or the other keeps getting more trendy from one sometime or the other, but they basically mean the same thing, you understand. So, that moderation, what is it at the base of that moderation? Something which is being done by the person out of choice, himself or herself, not at random, not in a haphazard way, but in a conscious, calculated, mindful way. The person has imposed on himself some discipline and control. But one might say that one can't go on working all the time. I need some rest and relaxation also. That is very valid. But then the mother cautions, and these are very valid cautions because this can happen very easily, that rest and relaxation should not be a pretext for slipping down in consciousness, doing something which is not appropriate, which is something which which is not going to help raise our consciousness, should not be an excuse for forgetting the goal of life. Well, all the time I'm working for the genuine goal of life, which is spiritual growth, but once in a while I can do other things which have nothing to do with the goal of life. Rest and relaxation can also have something to do with the goal of life. So one should not be, so rest and relaxation should not become an excuse for forgetting that goal. And something which helps us understand this is that relaxation can be in the form of inner silence, and rest can be just contemplation. That's also rest. Because distractions, which are sometimes taken as valid because they give us some rest and relaxations, actually they are distractions. They waste time, they waste energy, and that is what austerity is about: conserving time and energy for something that really matters. And distractions don't matter; they will not help us uh, pursue the goal of life. And distractions weaken the will, because all the will that has been built up by repetitive practice of austerity will get weaker if we give in to the distractions, and they lower the consciousness. And one of the most popular distractions of this type is gossip. And what the mother has said is very brief and same time very instructive. To gossip is wrong. To listen to gossip is wrong. Sorry, to gossip about what somebody is doing or not doing is wrong. To listen to such gossip is wrong. To try to verify such gossip is wrong. To react to that gossip is wrong. The whole thing is a terrible waste of time and brings down the consciousness. So relaxation is valid, but relaxation should be into force and light, not into obscurity and weakness. And along with the four austerities, the mother has also talked about four liberations. Physical austerity will liberate us from social conventions. We don't have to go to a get together just because the other person will feel bad. It is expected that if this event has taken place in that family, I must visit and so on. So it frees you, liberates you from that. Moral prejudices, you're not going by a conventional morality, which is not, which is full of prejudice along with some valid principles. You are going more by the what your own psychic being is telling. So it liberates you from that. But that does not mean that one lives a life of license, that I can do whatever I want because I'm free from social conventions and conventional morality. In fact, the rule that the person applies to himself or herself is a more severe rule than that embodied in the social conventions, etc. It demands great sincerity and is totally intolerant to hypocrisy. So maintain the consciousness always on the peak of its capacity and never allow the body to act under the influence of a lower impulse. So we saw all the lower impulses which can be there in relation to food or exercise or sleep and so on. Never to do that, and to maintain the consciousness always on the peak of its capacity. So the always and the never part are important because once in a while anybody can do it, maintain it at, can take the consciousness to the peak capacity, and the key is always, and if that is always, then one can be also vigilant about never allowing the body to act under the influence of a lower impulse. All the four austerities appear uh, in the complete works of the Veda, volume 12, chapter 8, pages 48 through 71. And these were first published in the form of 3 articles, which appeared in the February, April, and August issue of the Bulletin of Physical Education in the year 1953. But if you don't want to go to the complete works of the Mother, volume 12, then there's a small booklet also available uh, on just the four austerities and four liberations. And the four austerities and four liberations also form part of a beautiful collection on education, which is titled Sri Aurobindo and the Mother on Education. So at least at 3 places you can find it. And the internet is, of course, always there. You can see the complete works of the Mother, volume 12, on this link which is given here. Thank you all. And once again, I pass on to Aditi to have the last word.
The last word is the easiest word, that all of these things which we have been talking about, all of us have a sense of that this needs to be done. The easiest way to do it is to just anchor yourself in the inner presence. So if we go inside, the outer is taken care of. If we try to work on the outer without the inner connect, then we feel it's our responsibility to fix our life. We understand that all of these things need to be done, but how can they be done? By we being present inside. So if I am anchored, like I am in the state of awareness, presence within, then these things will be like naturally done through us. So it's a process that will unfold. So to know this thing, then offer this thing, and then become this thing. That is the one way of disciplining our own life in terms of expression, because body is required to express. It is an instrument to express. So that can be the last word, and we can see if anybody has any question or any sharings. Arunima, over to you. Arunima, if you're saying something, maybe it's just I'm not able to hear you or others are not able to hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I audible now? Thanks. We are truly grateful for your reflections and the wisdom you have shared, and for helping us recognize the importance of discipline and inner transformation in creating beauty that transcends the physical. We look forward to continuing this journey of learning with subsequent sessions in this special series. And as you said, let's check with the participants if they have any questions or anyone wants to share something. Participants, please go ahead. You can use the chat box or simply unmute yourself and speak up.
Hey, I have a question. Thankful for a pretty insightful information. This is probably a question to Ramesh ji. Just curious, in the whole of them, sleep is also one of them. I understand a need for a quality sleep. I think you also articulated what is that quality sleep means. And is there anything, a typical duration is recommended? What is right to? I know what is our medical science talks about it from the expertise on the area where you are in Ramesh ji. Do you have any suggestions for the duration of a sleep? You're muted if you're speaking here.
From the medical point of view, the requirement of sleep generally for most people is somewhere between 6 to 9 hours. But then individuals vary in their requirement, and the best way to find out is if the person is sleeping a certain amount and is energetic throughout the day, is not feeling sleepy during the day, then the person is sleeping enough. So that is the way to find out. Now about the yogic processes, as the quality of the sleep improves, its necessary duration can go down. So that can happen, and therefore one can get additional time as a result of it and also get more from the sleep. So as the sleep becomes more and more conscious, the requirement may go down. Conscious means that one is sleeping in the right frame of mind with a prayer and with the aspiration that the next day one again begins with in a meaningful way and has a meaningful day ahead. So that, and for that, it's necessary to recharge the batteries. And then there may be some awakening during the night a few times, which is quite normal. Each awakening can be once again used for renewing the aspiration. So these are some of the things which are a part of conscious sleeping.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir and Aditi, we do have some beautiful appreciation words for you in the chat box, but no questions so far. So before closing, I would just like to inform that the recording of today's session and all Yes Talks will be published on our YouTube channel, Yes Spirituality. Please do explore the channel for extensive content on yoga, education, spirituality, and related subjects like self-help, psychology, and wellness. Thank you, Dr. Bijlani sir. Thank you, Aditi, for your time, for your knowledge, and your presence. And participants, we thank you as well for being present with us today. We'll close today's session with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.